So how would you introduce yourself?
It's interesting. I'm going to answer that a couple different ways. If I'm introducing myself to someone in the industry or someone
Mhm.
who knows hospitality or hotels, it's simple. As a field director of sales and marketing, I oversee the sales efforts and results for a portfolio of hotels. When someone like yourself knows the industry, but for people outside the industry, they really just don't understand what salespeople do in hospitality. I
Mhm.
mean, even if they've booked a hotel for their kid's wedding
Yeah.
or a family reunion, or they even travel for business. I think people don't really understand what hotel sales does. And it's
Mhm.
not to say that there's a lack of knowledge. I'm not sure people are curious enough to want to know. But when you explain it to people, and when I explain it to people, I almost always see that metaphorical light bulb go off over their head as if to think, really, hotels need people to do that? And it's like,
Mm.
oh, yeah, we need people to do those things. So
Yeah.
if I'm talking to someone outside of hospitality, I try to let them know that sales in hospitality, it's not necessarily difficult. We're not curing cancer, we're not launching rockets, but it's also not an easy job because I think for so many years, and I won't say COVID broke it or changed it or didn't made it be that much different, but I think for so many years, hotel sales organically were a lot easier. But when we started to see heavy intermediation by the online travel agencies, when we started to see a procurement mindset from travel buyers, your travel managers, your VPs of purchasing, that and all those things, Josh, 9/11 changed the landscape. COVID clearly changed the landscape, the financial crisis in 2008. And those were all little incremental steps, I think, of how hotel sales has had to modify and adapt, and how we in hospitality sales have had to change our approach on so many things because the phone doesn't ring the same way it used to. A big part of what we do is I call it dialing for dollars, right? You're
Mhm.
picking up the phone and you're calling a potential customer. Well, at this point, you're lucky if you get someone to actually answer the phone. And even when you leave the most compelling voicemail or send a compelling email, your chances of getting someone to call back are equally small.
Yeah.
And thinking over my 30 plus years in this industry, it was never like that at the beginning. It was like
Mhm.
at the beginning, people kind of customers embraced hotel sales a lot more. And I think as those very small changes have happened over the last, let's call it 20 years, using 9/11 as a bit of a benchmark, I think people view it the same way. So we've had to modify and adapt on the hospitality side to change how we sell because customers have changed the way they buy.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the way you're thinking about this is because I'm trying to get back to the roots as well, right? Like,
Hmm.
how have things changed in the last 20 years? I think is a great question. And
Hmm.
I've been digging into like historically, where did this idea of a hotel come from? What does the word hospitality mean, right? And it's this mutual exchange of vulnerability. Like
I like that.
hospitality is hospes is the root word, and
Hmm.
that word meant both guest and host.
Interesting.
And so it was a sense of kind of other, right? Someone that is different than me. But there were rules created to say this is why and how you should allow someone into your home, right? Or
Hmm.
how and why you should allow someone that's traveling or that's in need to stay with you. And so I'm being vulnerable to host you and let you in, and you're being vulnerable also to step into my place.
What's interesting to me is I read a lot of historical fiction and nonfiction, and I'm really fascinated by the period of time from the Gilded Age, right? From like 1880 to
Mhm.
1915, loosely.
Mhm.
And I did read a book once upon a time that talked about the advent of the modern hotel, and it traced its roots back to that time in the Gilded Age. And while hotels have existed in the form that we would recognize, they've existed for 200 years, but they really started as like that roadside inn, and
Right.
it was shared beds and you didn't know who you were
Mhm.
sharing with. And
Yeah.
it was like a bed and breakfast, but
Yeah.
terribly, terribly rustic. And then
Mhm.
as we became a wealthier society and a more well-traveled society, the advent of the modern hotel as the kind of showplace in the middle of the city where the truly wealthy and cultured and educated went, In those days, so think 1860 to kind of 1900,
Mm,
often hotels were built by the very wealthy for the very wealthy. And people like you and me,
y
middle class working people,
yeah.
would probably have not gone there.
Mhm.
And there was even a period of time when the very wealthy would not go to a hotel
Mm,
because it
yeah.
signified that they did not have the financial means or network, if you will,
Right.
to ring up another wealthy friend and say, "Hey,
Right.
can I stay in your guest room?"
Right.
Right?
Right.
So wealthy people for a while truly didn't go to hotels because that was too common. It was too public. So then we get to a more mobile society, think train travel
Mhm.
in the early part of the 20th century, but certainly automobile travel. Well, then you have this whole class of people, the middle class, who now have access to simple transportation and they can go places and they want to go places. And I think that was really the dawn of the modern hotel age. And, it
Right.
goes back to founders like Kimmons Wilson,
Mhm.
Hilton, Howard Johnson,
Mhm.
these hotels at the side of the road. But it made the concept of hospitality a little bit more universal.
Yep.
And I think it also made it very accessible.
Mhm.
And then, you fast forward to the times we live in now when brands like Hilton and IHG and Marriott have multiple brands because
Mhm.
well, for any number of reasons. And each one of those brands want to make sure they're grabbing that piece
Yeah.
of the traveler wallet.
Right.
I think it's brilliant how hotels have evolved over time. What's interesting is that the concept of hospitality, which you mentioned, that concept I think has changed remarkably over time
Yeah.
from something that was a little bit more high touch and reactive to now low touch, but very anticipatory. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes those compete with one another.
Sure. Yeah, and I think part of what you're saying is even as hotels have become more accessible and have grown in size, there are times where it will naturally fill up with existing demand that is coming somewhere, but you need a sales team to fill these other gaps and even fill a foundational level of rooms
Hmm.
to maintain the operations of that hotel for the times when the demand wouldn't just naturally be there.
Yeah, absolutely. You do. And it's interesting in that regard because I think a lot of it has to do with where a hotel actually decides to be located. Not
Yeah.
that the hotel itself gets to decide, but
Yeah,
when
right.
owners, I want to put a hotel on this street corner, one is hopeful that they've performed their due diligence to understand what kind of business they can reasonably expect, right?
Yeah.
Look at the downtown convention center hotel. Yeah, you've got some built in, baked in demand that as long as the convention center sales team is doing their job, well, you're going to have a pretty steady faucet turned on of rooms coming in. You get your typical interstate hotel, right? Well, depending upon where it is on that interstate between city A and city B, yeah, you can expect there's going to be some baked in demand, travelers being hypermobile and really guests in general, thinking business travelers, that typical road warrior who may be going on a 3 city circuit tour to visit his businesses,
Right.
they're going to choose that roadside or that interstate hotel. I think when we get into an urban environment, a suburban environment that doesn't have one stable demand generator or one stable revenue source, I think that's a time when sales becomes absolutely fundamentally critical to getting that baseline of occupancy that helps the hotel financially remain open
Mm.
and a good investment for the owners.
Yeah. So what are the things you do? So I know even as you're describing what your role is, you've got an area, a group of hotels that you support from a sales perspective, meaning each hotel has their own team of salespeople, and your role is to help that sales team be more effective at their role, I would assume. Is that how you
Yeah,
would describe that?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The hotels that I oversee are the select service and extended stay variety. So in most cases, we have one salesperson
Hmm.
doing all the work, and that's okay because with specific or with low enough key count, you can have a one man band in
Yeah.
those buildings. But even if it is one person, I view my job, Josh. Um, well, first I'll tell you what I don't do,
Okay.
and that's I do not micromanage. I believe in any organization, and certainly my organization feels this way and feels very strongly. If we do the right job hiring someone, then it becomes more about collaboration and oversight versus day to day, touching base with the salesperson to make sure they're doing all the right things, right?
Mhm.
So I make it a point to have regular touch points with my sales professionals. But I tell them when I came on board, because I have a couple sales folks who predate me in their position or predate me in my position, I should say. But I tell new people when I bring them on, I'm like, look, I'm here if you need me, and we're going to talk on a regular basis, but I am not going to call you every day to see what you're doing.
Mhm.
Here are the expectations. And I think as long as we're clear with expectations,
Yeah.
this conversation becomes much easier. I can
Yeah.
say, look, here's the budget. Here's the revenues that need to be brought in. Here are the segments from which you should be getting business. Here are the tools and resources and platforms and programs to help you get that business. And then I'm pushing them out the door. Go get business. Right now, I think in the life cycle of every hotel, you're going to have times when, a demand generator closes or business contracts or you get a new competitor who starts eating your lunch, right? Those are the dynamics of the industry in which we work. So in those particular cases, I am going to lean in a little bit more. And I don't do that because I feel like I have to. I do it because I want to. One of the benefits, I think, of having been in this industry for as long as I have and selling for as many years as I have, I've seen a lot of up cycles and I've seen a lot of down cycles. And one constant through all of that was the need for sustained proactive sales activities or dialing for dollars or soliciting, however you want to kind of word that out. The need for a sales professional to constantly be mining for new business, whether it's new business, new account, new business, existing account, that has never gone away.
Yeah.
And I know from my days in training, because for a few years of my career, I worked in corporate training for Marriott.
Mhm.
That was a very big part of our overall training mantra. And a lot of the classes that I delivered, it was about, okay, you found this business. What are you going to do to go get more?
Right.
And it's not such a difficult concept, but it's not practiced often enough. I think a lot of times, and if there's one thing I could wave a magic wand and change, it would be fostering a constant hunger for more. And it's not to say that salespeople have gotten lazy or complacent, but I think sometimes we get that account and it's sunshine and roses and happiness and the hotel's making money. And yeah, that's great. But is there more? Is there more? And I relate myself back to a period of time when I was a general manager
Mhm.
um, of a residence inn. And we had a beautiful piece of base business, Josh. It was like the dream extended stay business. Sales training, 10 classes a year, 15 people, 30 nights. Great
Mhm.
business,
Yeah.
right? And we nurtured it and we loved it and we took care of it. And it was a great customer. Then one day I was meeting with the guy in charge, Tom Doyle, never forget him. He's etched into my mind.
Yeah.
And I said, Tom, I know we've been hosting your initial sales training, but are you responsible for any more sales training? And it's funny. Tom was the consummate salesperson. He sat back and he crossed his arms and he says, Mike, I have been waiting for 5 years for your hotel to ask me that question. So number one, shame
Yeah.
on me and my hotel that we had
Yeah.
not asked the question earlier. But
Mhm.
it turned out he did advanced sales training, smaller group, 2 week stays.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
again, and to me, that was so eye-opening. I wouldn't say my hotel got complacent or lazy or fat and happy. I would just say we'd never thought that there might be more out there. So
Mm.
one thing I try to foster with my sales professionals is that curiosity and just
Yeah.
simply asking the question, is
Mhm.
there anything else? Is
Mhm.
there anyone else?
Mm.
I see it a lot now, Josh, as we come out of COVID. And I like to think COVID's pretty much in the rearview mirror. It changed the industry indelibly. We'll never be the same, right? And that's okay too. But I think one thing that changed is once we found the business, we're holding on to it real tight because we don't want to lose it. But I also think that we have gotten a little less curious than we need to be. And so I try to foster that element of curiosity and engaging with the customer. And are we actually asking our guests who are in the building, hey, who else should I be talking to? I
Mhm.
want more of your business.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think salespeople get a bad rap just for any number of reasons. You know, you can blame the used car industry, you can blame the mattress salesman,
Yeah.
you can blame
Sure.
anyone. I think salespeople sometimes get a bad rap. So I encourage my sales professionals, don't necessarily think of yourself as a sales manager or a director of sales or a catering sales manager. Think of yourself as a detective,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're looking for the
Mhm.
answers. The question is, who has business? What is that business? Where is that business? But I think we need salespeople who view their job as becoming a detective, you know, looking at that one reservation and unraveling the mystery. I have a friend, she and I grew up in Marriott together, and she was relaying a story one time that when she was a director of sales, she saw an interesting company name on her guest ledger, right? The list of companies. She connected with the guest. It turned out he was part of an advanced team that was getting ready to do a special project. I want to say it was with either Lockheed Martin or Boeing. This was in Southern California. And he was part of the advanced team scouting out locations. Michelle connected with him, qualified it, and found $1 million worth of business. And I think those $1 million opportunities are under our nose every single day. And I brought COVID into it earlier. I think we stopped being as curious as we were prior to COVID. And I would like to see us become curious again.
There's a lot you said in there that I was thinking about. You said that there's this need for proactive, ongoing sales activities. And sometimes
Absolutely.
it's hard to keep moving when you have a win, right? You want to sit
Uh-huh.
on that for a minute. I love to watch this reality show called Alone, which is just like people get dropped off in the middle of
Okay.
nowhere and they have to survive by themselves. Like they get 10 things they bring with them. But one of the common things that I laugh so much about because I run my own company is people will stay for like 90 days sometimes, like camping by themselves and like just have to find their own food. But early on, somebody will catch a fish and they're just elated and they're having the best time and they're like so happy. And the next day they can't catch a fish and they're at the worst time. You see these people's emotions just they think they're going to get to stay forever and then the next day they think they're like have to go home immediately, but they go on this emotional roller coaster that I think it's the same way running my own company too, or any sales role is you get a big win and you almost think, oh, okay, I can relax for a minute. But the reality is, okay, we need to be making relentless forward progress. We need to keep
Yeah.
this ball rolling. Like, as soon as we stop rolling the ball, I should go, now that I have this win, I need to go get another one because they can stack on top of each other. And I'll get more excited. I'll believe in it more. I'll have more fun when I call the next person on the list, like you're talking about. It is a fascinating thing though about sales in general.
Yeah, and I think our best sales professionals in the industry, certainly in my organization, certainly in organizations with which you're familiar, I think the best sales professionals are the ones who personalize it enough that they know how to take the victory lap,
Mhm.
not necessarily when to take the
Yeah.
victory lap, but how to take the victory lap. But they always know that they've got to keep looking, they've got to find more, they've got to
Mhm.
find more. And
Mhm.
it is tough. I won't lie. Thinking back to those dips in the cycle that we've both experienced, those were the times when I think salespeople became the strongest because they knew, and truly, I think the best sales professionals are the ones that understand it's not just about them.
Yeah.
That it is truly about that front desk clerk who's trying to put herself through college.
Yeah.
It's about the 60 hours to
Mhm.
keep her rent,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
about that restaurant server.
Mhm.
If there's not enough tips coming in, they've got to go get a second job,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think that the best salespeople have a high level of
Mhm.
competitiveness in that they want to win, they want to beat their competition, they want to get the big bookings, but it is also kind of juxtaposed with this deep, heartfelt empathy
Mhm.
that if they don't do their job, they are impacting the income, the life, the food on the
Yeah.
table of people who work at that hotel.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting.
Mhm.
I've been experienced or I've experienced salespeople who run the gamut of everywhere between like totally what's in it for me, what's my bonus compensation, how are you
Right.
going to recognize me, all the way over to the ones that are taking money out of their own pocket to buy the housekeeper's lunch. And I think, and that spectrum is good. That spectrum
Mhm.
has its place in this industry. And it certainly has its place in the hotel environment writ large. But I think your salespeople who are most successful, and this is my own unresearched analysis, but the ones who are happiest being salespeople are the ones that know how to balance that aggressive, always on the hunt for business with
Yeah.
the empathy side of things. Because the
Yeah.
empathy, to my way of thinking, extends to how we take care of our customers,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's easy. And what I used to always tell salespeople when I would sit down one on one and with them and train them, either in a formal classroom environment or just one on one, like our conversation, is that they had to find a way to differentiate their hotel from every other hotel out there, right? Because at the end of the day, if you take the signage off the building, if no one's wearing a name
Mhm.
tag, if there was no identifying mark in any way on a building or a person, most customers would be hard pressed to say, "Oh, that's a Home 2 Suites,"
Yeah.
or
Right.
"Oh, that's a Holiday Inn Express," or
Mhm.
"Oh, fill in the blank," right?
Mhm.
And so I always encourage my salespeople to do several different things to just get in the sales mindset. Number one, find out what makes them different and embrace it. And then be genuinely curious about your customers and about their business needs, right? So, an example of this is I oversee a couple of Candlewood suites. And one of them, well, both of them actually, but one of them very specifically is located in a market that has a heavy concentration of oil and gas.
Mhm.
So, you can imagine a typical traveler for oil and gas. It's a guy in his 20s or 30s. He's wearing the construction boots. He leaves in the morning, comes back dirty. It's tough physical work, right? So Candlewood Suites as a brand does not serve breakfast. So when I brought in a new salesperson, he's like, "We really need to think about breakfast." I'm like, "No, we don't. Your brand doesn't do that. So find a way to sell without it." And it took a couple of conversations. And I walked down that path with him, Josh. I said, "Okay, do we go to local restaurants and see if they'll give us breakfast coupons? We looked at a bunch of different things to give these customers breakfast. And at the end of the day, it wasn't brand pure. And so this salesperson, he finally got himself to the place where when customers are like, gosh, we would like breakfast. He's like, you know what? That's not something we do. Here are some options. So in his case, he learned to talk about what was great about his hotel and address the fact that we're not going to do breakfast for you, right? So that combined with a natural curiosity has made this sales guy really successful.
Mhm.
He makes it a point to go out and visit the job sites, recognize the guests when they come in, reach out to them in advance of arrival, finding ways to make their stay a little bit more special. So it's that empathy, it's that curiosity, it's that genuine interest in others
Yeah.
makes for a good, successful salesperson.
Mhm. So you said one was embracing how you're different, two is the genuine interest in your customer. Was there another one, or those are the 2 that you stick on?
Well, I'd say the third is a drive seed. You know,
Yeah.
I remember in my early days of being a salesperson, I was dialing for dollars. We called it telemarketing then, but I would have a list of leads and I would pick up the phone and I would call. And these were in the days before people stopped answering their phones, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would get voicemail a fair amount of time, but people answered their phone more often than not. And I looked on it as I was actually happy when someone would say, "Not interested," and hang up on me. To me, it's okay, that's one person.
Mhm. Yeah.
And immediately, and I might mutter a few things under my breath, right? But
Sure.
immediately, though, I'm picking that phone back
Yeah.
up and I'm dialing again. And
Mhm.
because it's a drive to succeed. It's not being afraid of no. I think that's another critical personality trait that salespeople, I think in general, they have that.
Yeah.
I think some people get hung up on the no, even if they can work past it. I think embracing the no, embracing that customer saying, I'm not interested. Please lose my number.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one customer out of how
Right.
many?
Right.
Hang it up, brush
Yeah.
it off, and dial again.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of persistence that I love in my sales professionals.
Yeah, that's good. I think about with the persistence and the getting a no is one, do you believe in yourself? And what is this no affecting you personally? Because I think sometimes people take it personally, right? It affects their own emotions. And then two,
Hmm.
do you believe in the thing that you're selling? So if the no comes to you and you don't believe in the thing you're selling, it's proof that this thing that I'm trying to sell is no good.
Right.
Or it's proof that I'm no good at this job. But those are the 2 things that if you continue to have a sense of self and resilience and continue to build strength in knowing who you are, the no is okay. A no doesn't hurt anything. It's kind of like, "Oh, great, let's keep doing this."
Yeah. You got to
Mhm.
let it roll off your back in some ways.
Yeah,
Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. Some no's hurt worse than others.
sure.
Right? If it's the big account that you've nurtured and you've formed a good
Yeah.
relationship and done
Mhm.
everything right or everything by the book and things are
Yeah.
going well and the customer seems to be totally into it,
Mhm.
and then they call you and they say, "Oh, well, we're going with another hotel."
Yeah.
That can be a
It
little soul
hurts.
crushing,
Right.
right? But I
Mhm.
think the best sales professionals try to view that as an opportunity to continue to nurture the relationship. I had customers that told me no several times. And even though each one of those individual times was a little bit of a blow, I made sure that I secured their agreement that, hey, can I follow up with you in 3 months? Can I follow up with you to see how this next one goes at the XYZ hotel? Right. And for the customers who said, yes, absolutely, I can say with confidence, they eventually said yes to me in my hotels.
Mhm.
Right? So
Yeah.
there is that long-term relationship piece. And
Mhm.
and what's interesting, I think sometimes we view hotel sales as very transaction oriented, right? Because in your realm and in Prosper's realm, you guys are looking at group booking pace, right? We look at our groups booking with us or what groups are out there, what contracts are we waiting to get back. And so that becomes a little bit transactional in some ways. And indeed, even in the business transient realm, it is a transaction, right? We are offering goods and services. We are asking for money in return. So it is a transaction. Same with a group, same with a wedding or a Smurf group or a corporate, whatever. It is transactional, but it can be a transactional relationship that runs deeper than just someone saying, yes, sell me hotel rooms.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
in the example I give, I realize that a lot of esoteric word salad there, so I apologize. But I think the true testament to that is when a salesperson says, "Oh, I'm knocking off early on Friday because I'm driving to whatever city because I was invited to a customer's wedding," right? I joined the Chamber of Commerce and became friends with these people, and we're all going on vacation together. And that's what tells me that while at heart, hotels have to be about a transaction, a business transaction, we can still have really good relationships, really strong relationships that will yield results beyond next month's P&L statement.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember somebody on your team saying I can't remember how it came up in conversation, but it was about a specific airline, and she said, "I deliver donuts to the desk at the airport every week." There's these relationships that folks build that are so much more meaningful than just the sales. Oh, you can get a good benefit from that of getting rooms when
Right.
a flight's canceled, but that's also like a beautiful thing that you've built this friendship. I love to hear and see the ways that salespeople have these chances to really build in the community and deepen the roots and like love on people in the community. And oh, by the way, let me help you when you have a chance. But also, I just want to be a leader and present and available in this community that we're a part of.
Yeah. And if there's one thing I encourage my sales professionals to do is to go be visible, go be the
Yeah.
face of the hotel,
Mhm.
right? When people see you, I don't care if you wear a logo shirt or your
Sure.
name tag, but for goodness sake, put your hand out, shake their hand,
Yeah.
show that genuine interest,
Mhm.
sincere, genuine interest in that customer, right?
Yeah.
I think it's so critical. And what's also interesting to me is, again, I'll say midway in my sales career, as I was doing sales training, a huge focus is getting to the decision maker, right? And I'll try not to go down too many paths with this because once upon a time, I think more hotel buying decisions were centralized. And now I think they're terribly decentralized. So we would admonish people, go find the decision maker. That's great. And you want to find that decision maker. But, sometimes I know in one case for me in particular, I made friends with the security guard at the desk of an office building.
Mhm.
And it was a single tenant office building, it was their headquarters. And I made friends with the security guard. And I did that same thing that you just described. Like once every 2 weeks, I'd take some treats over and I'd walk in and we would have an honest conversation. And I was open with her about that. I said, I just want to get a better idea of who is coming into this building so I can find their business and put it into my hotel. So there has to be an element of honesty and
Yeah.
element with it. But I didn't walk in every 2 weeks and say, okay, tell me what you know. Right. I would just walk in and drop off some treats. We'd have a 5-minute conversation. I might say, hey, anything new? And I would move on. But she had my phone number. And when a subcontractor group came in from a third party, I knew about it and I was able to get the business. So again, I think that goes back to some of the elements. It's the curiosity, it's genuine interest, it's forming personal relationships,
Mhm.
it's being hungry
Yeah.
and taking the victory lap when you can, but make it one lap, please, not
Yeah.
two or three.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to switch gears a little bit. So back to like thinking about introducing yourself to somebody that's not in the industry. Earlier you mentioned a hotel team needs to go after specific segments and use specific tools. And so I would love
Mhm.
for you to break down for me or for somebody outside of the industry, what are those segments that you would be looking at as a salesperson in a hotel?
Well, I'll start by saying every hotel is different.
Yeah.
I'll start with kind of that BT or business transient segment because I think that's the one that's most easily identifiable
Okay.
for a lot of hotels in general, right? If you're going outside of
Mhm.
a resort area or a destination area, I think most hotels have to have some component of that constantly churning weekday
Mhm.
business transient piece,
Okay.
right? So several tools actually come to mind when thinking about business transient. Any kind of like Chamber of Commerce or CVB listing, they're going to tell you the big businesses in the community. Hopefully, through the development and initial opening of a hotel, there's a hit list of the big accounts in the area, the big businesses in the area. These are the ones the hotel should target, right? So you've got financial due diligence prepared by owners, by banks, again, CVB or Chamber of Commerce listings. That's going to tell you who those business customers are within a community. Shifting gears, thinking about a social segment. To me, that's all about being visible in those places where your typical buyers are going to present themselves. So, weddings, right? Super simple as a sales professional. If you're trying to find wedding business, go to the places where weddings take place, right? Go to your country clubs, go to your churches, go to your event and banquet facilities, go to your outdoor venues who seasonally are going to see a little bit more of that. Go to your dress shops, go to your cake shops, go to your wedding planners, right? And I could go on and
Mhm.
on. We could
Mhm.
spend our entire time together talking about success in the
Yeah.
weddings,
Yeah.
right? In the leisure segment, I think it's about price and position in many cases. All of our hotels participate in some kind of visibility within the AAA or ARP or senior
Mhm.
platforms. So in those cases, it's going to those organizations that are vendoring those rates and
Mhm.
making sure they know that your hotel exists.
Okay.
Sports groups, huge revenue source for many of the hotels within my organization, right? So again, it's going to those places where sports groups are going to present themselves, whether it's a group of soccer fields, like at our Memphis hotel, we're really close to a soccer complex that has, gosh, Josh, I forget, maybe 8 or 12 competition soccer fields.
Mhm.
So going to the people who manage that organization and selling our hotel and asking for visibility on a website. There's that. And in conventions, Again, we could unpack each one of those segments.
Yeah.
I think in general, it's about knowing where the customers are going to exist
Mm.
and then leveraging technology and relationships and brand resources to bring it all together.
Yeah.
And an example I can give you on this, all the brands have a centralized transaction platform of some kind. When that lead comes through there, it's all about responsiveness, right?
Right.
Speed of doing business. In the olden days, and I'm not going to define it any more than saying in the olden days.
Sure.
In the olden days, I think customers would have a little bit more tolerance if you didn't call them back a day or 2 days. The way that business is transacted these days, the speed with which customers have access to information
Yeah.
and, for whatever reason, feel they need to make a decision
Mhm.
should be impacting hospitality
Yep.
in our speed of response.
Yeah.
And so, speed back to market, if you will, is
Mhm.
absolutely critical and something that I won't lie, I harp on. If I see untransacted leads that have been sitting in a platform for more than a day, I won't say I get angry, but I will say that though I don't micromanage, I will call that sales professional and
Mhm.
say, "What are you doing here? This needs a response."
Yeah.
Um, and I think crystal balling this out into the future, I think that's going to slow down a little bit.
Mhm.
I think now that most people would say or assume that COVID is not having the impact it did 2, 3, 4 years ago, I think customers are going to start looking for more of a human touch. I think people are going to become a little more accepting of a higher degree of personal engagement.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big keys to making that happen is a lot of companies starting to say, okay, you have to come back to the office. I
Mhm.
was listening to the radio this morning, and I believe it was
Yeah.
Amazon who said, as of January
Yeah.
1st, you are back in the office five
Mhm.
days a week. And I
Mhm.
think that's pretty remarkable. But with that forced human engagement that employees are going to have with one another, I think we will start to see phones getting answered again and customers being more open to that face to face sales call where we can build and nurture relationships because at the heart of the industry,
Right.
it is about relationships.
Yeah.
I know this sounds corny as all get out, but I believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that even the examples you've given of the differentiator about your hotel and your brand, sure, those always are there. But the thing that really will make you stick out is if you did the work to show that you really cared about that person to make their stay or their group or any of that kind of stuff what they wanted it to be.
What's interesting about that is I've seen the hotel industry kind of move in that direction of that personalization piece more than we ever have, right? There's the pre arrival email. I stayed in one of our hotels earlier this week, and because they had my mobile number in my honors
Mhm.
profile, I got a text after I checked in. And no, it wasn't after I checked in, it was the next day. And I got a text from the FOM saying, "Are you enjoying your stay?" Now, I know it was auto generated. I'm smart enough to get that. I know it was auto generated, but I truly believe that when brands do that, they are showing that sincere interest and they're trying to gather that guest feedback and improve the guest experience for everyone.
Yep.
All of that is noble and good and necessary. And it's where we're going in the industry. So we better embrace it, right? I think what we could get back to is bringing more of the human element into that. And I think
Mhm.
sales is perfectly
Yeah,
poised to do that, to
absolutely.
show that sincere interest and that
Mhm.
genuine caring. And this gets back, Josh, actually to what you said earlier at the top of our talk about hospitality and how that is defined and in both people being open and maybe a little bit vulnerable.
Mhm.
And I think that salespeople at heart, when they are vulnerable in that way, I think that's what makes them successful.
Mhm. Yeah. Because they wanna know that the people that they're bringing are going to have a good time. They wanna know that they're gonna look good to their boss, right? These little things you can get to as a salesperson and have a conversation of, "Hey, let me better understand what you're trying to accomplish, and then I can show you why will be a good fit," right? But that personalization doesn't happen when it's just about immediate response of, like, your rates and availability. It's
Yeah.
much more about, "Here's how I'm gonna help you be successful in what you want." I totally agree with you. Like, in the age of speed and automation, there is still a movement toward and a desire for connection and authenticity and someone that really cares. And I think that's what your sales team is for and what they do so well.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's interesting you should say that because I've traveled a lot over the course of my career, and the most memorable hotel experiences I ever had nothing to do with the comfort of the bed or how crisp the bacon was the next morning
Mhm.
or the rate I paid or any of the stuff and any of the like table stakes, right? We talk about brand standards, I think in terms of table stakes, right? You've
Yep.
got to execute the basics well,
Mhm.
flawlessly, one would
Mhm.
say. But the most memorable stays I ever had, and I carry them with me to this day, are the ones where someone showed a sincere interest in me,
Yep.
right? Because business travel is grueling. It's
Mhm.
absolutely positively grueling. Has it gotten better? I don't know. But I can tell you that when a traveler has that kind of experience of that sincere interest, that sincere caring
Mhm.
about a customer, and
Yeah.
number one, it can't be faked.
Yep.
I don't believe
That's
that
right.
it cannot be faked at all. When it
Yeah.
is genuine and sincere, I don't want to go so I don't want to say life changing, but it's something you don't forget.
Mhm. Yeah. What's one of those stories?
I was traveling to Phoenix. Okay, so for context, I used to travel when I was with Marriott. I delivered training all over the United States and supported franchise companies throughout the United States. So a typical week had me going out on a Monday morning and getting back on a Friday afternoon, sometimes evening, 2 to 3 cities a week. And I did that for many years, right? So I was flying to Phoenix and I had had a day of meetings someplace, got to Phoenix, and it was August or September, so very warm, and it was like 11 o'clock at night. So I'm sure I looked like your typical weary traveler dragging my suitcase
Mhm.
in behind me at 11 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
And I was checking into a loft. No, it was a Moxie. I was checking into a Moxie because Moxie's got the bar at the front desk. And the front desk clerk took one look at me and said, "You look like you've had a long day. Let's get you checked in. Would you like your complimentary beverage now or later?" I said, "I'm good. I don't need it right now." Great. She asked me my name and I told her and she said, "Oh, we've been expecting you." I'm like, "Okay, well, I can imagine because my name's on a list and it's 11 o'clock and you're wondering, is this guy going to check in?" Right. She said, "By the way, we've already got the training room set up for tomorrow. It's unlocked. If you want to poke your head in and confirm the setup, I can have our overnight houseman make any changes if you need him to." And then the pleasant surprises along those lines, Josh, continued. Because so I went up to my room and I came back down. And when I came back down, she handed me the beverage of the day because I said, "Not right now." So she anticipated that I would want it eventually. But I went up, threw my bag down, came back down, checked out the training room. And the surprise and delight happened the next day, right? So I came downstairs at around 7 o'clock to do my final setup. The meeting room attendant was in there setting up the breakfast, came right over, introduced herself, shook my hand. "You must be Mike. We are so excited to host this training class," right? And I was in that building less than 24 hours.
Mm.
And this happened to me probably 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And the reason I remember it is someone or several someones at that hotel had to have sat down with staff members and said, "This dude is coming in from Marriott. Here is why he is coming in. We don't know when he is coming in. Let's make it right for him." Right.
Mhm.
And every touch point I had with a staff person at that hotel in the less than 24 hours, because it was a one
Yeah.
day training class, started at 9, ended at 4, and I
Mhm.
was out on the red eye that night out of
Mhm.
Phoenix. Right. And literally everyone with whom I came in contact was delightful and they seemed to love their job.
Yeah.
But that told me that's a culture inside that hotel. And you can
Mhm.
feel it. I know you travel a lot too. You can feel it when you get into a hotel.
Mhm. Yeah, when you can see that it's an interesting paradox, right? Of like people, they've planned ahead. They are usually more prepared than others, but then because they're more prepared, they have more space, like in the immediate, to be
Hmm.
present, right? Like, I'm looking you in the eye. I'm grateful for you being here. We've got this taken care of. versus other places where the culture can be frantic and you can feel lost in all of that. I feel like with travel, I get lonely. There's like people all over, all around me, and no one's making a real connection. And I probably don't want to talk to someone on the plane either, but I do appreciate when someone does make the space and the time to like genuinely connect.
The big
Mhm.
change I've made since COVID is now when I travel, I purposefully do not listen to music.
Mm,
Right? Even though I've been in the Atlanta airport more times than I can count,
yeah.
I know what it sounds like. I know what it smells like. I know it, right? You could
Mhm.
say that for a lot of airports, as could you. But what I found since I started taking out my headphones and not listening to music is I'm just more aware of what is happening around me. And even
Yeah.
if it's there to people watch, but I just think that because travel is lonely, you're absolutely correct. Travel can be lonely. That small little connection with someone in the line at In-N-Out Burger in
Mhm.
the Los Angeles airport, right?
Mhm.
Even that 5-second engagement,
Yeah.
you just never know how you might be surprised
Yeah.
or how you could impact someone's life.
Mhm.
And I know it sounds really strange, but I think hospitality can impact people's lives for
Yeah.
the better as
Absolutely.
long as we practice true hospitality.
Yeah. Right. That's good.
Well,
That
I
was
I
great.
cannot tell you how much I have enjoyed this. I
Yeah.
feel like, I babbled a lot, but I hope they understand that hotel sales can be so many different things, and it can foster so many different emotions, but it can truly be a joyful experience, and
Mhm.
honestly, that's why I've stuck around as long as I have because
Mhm.
I believe that hotel sales does function as a critical role overall
Yeah.
in the hotels, but I think thinking more broadly, I just think hospitality sales has a way of enhancing people's lives. I
Yeah.
know it sounds cheesy,
I
but
love
that's
it.
me.
I
That's how I
believe it
feel.
too, man.
All right.
That's right. I
Well,
love
thanks,
it.
Josh.
Thank you.
Take care now.
All right. I'll see you soon.